Happy Monday, my artsy friends. Welcome to our regularly scheduled Monday morning live. I am, as usual, excited and both honored that you took time out of your busy day to jump over here and join me in this little thrifty corner of the art world. Today's live, we are going to be concentrating on granulation, specifically in watercolor. My idea and my plan today is to share with you just different things about granulation, concentrating on three different ways to get it. A, by purchasing a granulating watercolor set. B, by using granulation medium. Or C, by using salt. Yes, all three are wonderful ways to achieve granulation. Now, we're going to be swatching some granulating watercolors together. And the reason I decided to do this particular portion of the live is because I referred back to a live I had about a year ago where we were playing around with granulation watercolors. And I noticed that the audio in that live was super, super low. And it was really hard for people to hear what was being said. So I'm not sure, um, I just felt like it needed to be a redo on top of the fact that I've kind of switched up the different things or the colors that are in the granulation palette that I have. And we are going to be going through that and we're going to be swatching these colors together in really big watery swatches so that we can see the granulation take effect. I do plan on doing a demo, so I'm not really sure how long this live is going to be. So if you're here for the long haul, welcome. If not, you can always come back and finish things on the replay. However you choose to do it, just know that this is what I want to share today. So, starting off with last night. So last night, one of the main reasons I was up so late. Well, hold on, back up 1 second. One thing I want to touch on before we get started. One or two things I want to touch on. If What's coming up? What's coming up? Now, last live, I'm just going to show these real quick because I know everybody didn't see between the brush strokes. So this is what we did last live. We tackled the February 2026 Light Wish watercolor calendar painting. So if you didn't get a chance to see this, this was last live. If you want to go paint alone, you can just use regular watercolor paper. Not a big deal. Hello, Virginia. Welcome in, friend. I'm glad you made it to a live. I am. I'm so happy to see you here. So this was the last live. Very easy, straightforward, sort of intermediate type landscape that you can go tackle at your leisure. A lot of fun. Now, this Wednesday coming up, which is in a couple days, we are going to be doing another sort of beginner intermediate landscape where we are what I'm doing really is continuing to test the paper inside the Art Bible Journal, which I already know how I feel about it. But you guys know before I review anything, I like to use it in several different ways. That way, I'm sure I'm able to offer a really genuine opinion on how I feel about it. With that being said, this is an illustration we will be tackling this upcoming Wednesday on our pre-recorded 10 a.m. release. So if this seems interesting to you and you want to learn how to paint this cute little beach scene, then definitely come on, catch the channel or the video drop. That's what I'm trying to say. The video drop this Wednesday. Yeah, and hopefully it'll be a lot of fun to paint along with. A lot of fun to paint along with. Let's see. Was there anything else I want to share? Yes. Now I can't remember hmm, if it was in one of my lives or if it was in one of Christy lives. I think it was in one of Christy lives. We were talking somehow or another liquid watercolors came up. And somebody in this comment section said that they had no idea that there were liquid watercolors. And I'm not sure what, but one thing led to another. And I agreed to do a video on using liquid watercolors to paint with. So you guys can you can expect to see that either on one of the upcoming Monday morning lives or on a pre-recorded release Wednesday's video. But as I was getting my granulation watercolors together last night, I actually created a completely different granulating watercolor palette last night for this particular live. I ran across my swatch sheet of Ken Oliver liquid watercolors. I have a 12 bottle set that was sent to me by Diane Zimmerman, if you guys know who she is. Way, way, way back when I first started my channel. This was 2019, 2020. She was one of the first supporters that I had, and she put together this huge, 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 huge care package and sent me so many different things. And as a part of that care package was the Ken Oliver liquid watercolor 12 bottle set. So this is the liquid watercolor set that I'll be using for that video that I'm talking about creating. Now, a lot of these I have actually gone ahead and poured the liquid watercolor into empty empty, what do you call the things? Water brushes. And I'll show you what I mean. So I poured the liquid watercolors into empty water brushes, which is a really cool way to make your own like mermaid marker, if you know what that is, or to yeah. So they have so many different uses and so many different things you can do with them. So those will be featured in the upcoming video soon. I just kind of want to let you guys know that. Now, granulation. Let's talk about it. What is granulation? Basically, it's texture. It is texture in watercolor. And that texture is typically created when you talk about pre-made granulation sets, when the factory mills or does not mill the pigments for a watercolor paint as finely, causing those pigments to sit on top of the paper versus absorbing into it and creating a texture. Now, that is not the only way it's created. That's the main way it's created. And some of those formulated paints have different additives to it to force that granulation to be more explosive. And then, of course, there are things that you can buy separate from actual granulating paints. We're going to get to that in just a minute. So that's basically what granulation is. So I don't necessarily have a granulating paint set. And I've been fighting the want monster about buying one. And then I thought to myself, based on seeing another artist do this, why not pull, because I have dozens and dozens of paint sets. Why not pull out my tube paints and figure out what colors I already have from the different sets I own that granulate and create my own granulating palette? So I pulled out a couple of different brands. I did research on what colors or what pigments tend to cause granulation, what colors granulate subtly versus what colors granulate heavily. And I put together a 18, 19 color palette, something like that, of paints from different brands based on pigments that granulate. Now, when we start talking about granulation, if you're not going to buy a granulating set that already granulates, it this is when it does become important for you to kind of know pigments, what they do in their numbers, because you um, every company doesn't mark a particular color as being granulated. And if you want to do what I did last night, which is to put your own set together, then you do kind of have to know a little bit about pigments and which ones cause textures, or which colors you can mix with non-textures texture colors in order to get them to granulate and split apart. Now, I know I'm trying not to be all over the place. I'm trying to keep this together. I am still a little crazy in the head right now. Like I said, there's been a lot going on. So let's talk about how I like to do things when it comes to granulation. First of all, I tend to like to use granulating watercolors on cellulose paper. Huh? Thrifty, why would you do that? It has been my experience, and I've said this to you guys before, and I know that some of you have gone back and experimented with this, that granulation tends to show better on a cellulose paper than it does on a 100% cotton paper. I have no idea why. My theory is that because the pigments are chunky and cellulose paper is less absorbent, it will cause the water to puddle on top of itself, on top of the surface of the paper more. And one of the main features that you need to really be able to see the granulation in your watercolor is a very equal balance of a lot of water and pigment. Water tends to help induce that granulation, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of think that that's kind of my deductive logic behind why using a seal, or why it has been my experience that I can see granulation, and granulation tends to work better on a cellulose paper. Um, so what I did was, as I said, I went through all of my paint tubes last night and I put together a set of granulating colors based on pigment number. What pigments granulate, what pigments don't. Now, I'm going to walk through this. I'm going to share everything with you because you may actually have some of these pigments in your very own art arsenal. We're going to swatch them out. I am going to touch on pigment numbers because when it comes to granulating watercolors, that is like the main thing. The pigments they're made of literally depict whether or not it is going to granulate or not. So what I just did was pre-sprayed my granulating palette, and I did that because, as I told you earlier, water is one of the main things that helps that granulation happen, right? I mean, we need the water for the paints anyway. It's watercolor, right? I mean, hello, uh, somebody help me. All right. I'm gonna move that to the side and we're just gonna jump in to get started. So the first thing we're gonna look at as far as granulation goes is actual paints that are formulated to granulate. The second thing we're going to look at is using what is known as a medium, an additive, a helper, a helping hand, something that helps to induce what you are trying to do. In this particular case, we're looking at a granulation medium. Now, I personally own Winsor and Newton granulation medium because one of you sweet people decided to send it to me. Um, and you can actually add this directly to your washes or actual to your water bucket in order to help make granulation appear more. Uh, and you can add it to both granulating paints and non-granulating paints in order to kind of induce granulation. Now, this is going to be sort of, time consuming because I'm doing this live, and I was debating whether to do this type of video live or pre-recorded, but I said, hey, I want to kind of be able to talk to you guys directly about this, let you ask me questions in live, real time. That way I could give you the best answer I possibly could. So that's the second way. The third way I wanted to talk to you guys about introducing, or inducing, should I say, granulation is this little baby here that everybody has in their kitchen. You do not need to go out and buy an expensive granulation medium, okay? Or not that they're all that expensive, but you don't need to go buy one because I can guarantee you that each and every one of us has salt in our kitchen cabinet. And salt is a wonderful natural element to help push granulation. Now, this should be something that is like a aha moment to most of us because we already know that you can take a non-granulating watercolor paint, use it in a really wet wash, sprinkle salt in it, and what happens? It causes texture. It gives that paint speckles and sparkles and breaks and breakdowns. It will make a paint look so unique, right? So it kind of makes sense that this would also be a natural element that would help induce granulation. And you can use it with what? Non-granulating paints as well as granulating paints. So let's jump into the first method first, and this is where we're just going to swatch granulating paints. I'm going to talk to you, excuse me, about the pigment numbers, the pigment breakup. You may want to grab your pen and paper if you're in the position to do that, just in case you want to kind of jot some of this down and maybe go through your own watercolor paints later on to see if you already have colors or pigment numbers that are granulate instead of spending money. Because keep in mind, this particular year for me is about trying to be more frugal and to use up as many sketchbooks as possible, right? All right. So what I'm going to do is hello, hey Gwen, hello Virginia, hi friends, how are you all? Uh, I'm just looking at the comment section, making sure there's no questions or anything I want to touch on pop up right quick. Nope. All right, let's go ahead and get into this thing. So what I did was after I pulled all of my tubes out that had pigments in it that I felt like would granulate, I then tried to put it in rainbow order in my palette. And of course, you guys know not only do I organize my palettes in rainbow order, I also organize them in temperature order from what my eye detects as coolest to warmest. It's not always a 100% soundproof way, but you know it works. So the first color we're going to look at is coming from, oh, before I say that, many different brands. There's Schminke in here, there's Turner in here, there's Raw Talons Van Gogh in here. There is Artwell in here. There are Core paints in here. There are Shinhan PWC paints in here. There are Da Vinci paints in here. Um, yeah, so those are the different brands that I had that I was able to pull. Now, I had other brands that had those colors in it or that had granulating pigments in it, but maybe one brand formulated theirs to granulate a little bit more than the other. So I tried to pick the ones that had the most granulating. Starting with this first, we're going to start with reds. We're going to be looking at Van Gogh Dust Pink. So the first thing I would do when I'm trying to induce granulation from a pre-made paint is to go ahead and wet the area, right? Wet that area because I want to get good, nice saturation going because this is what's going to help the granulation. Then you want to take pigment, and in this case, I'm using Van Gogh Dust Pink, which is made of PBR11, which is a granulating black, and PV19. Now, the PV19 is not the granulating watercolor pigment, but the PBR11 is, which causes the granulation. So we're just gonna, oh, look at how gorgeous that is. Now, that's kind of concentrated. I'm gonna spread that out. Dust pink is a gorgeous, gorgeous color, and it is a part of the Royal Talens Van Gogh family line of paints. I happen to love Van Gogh paints. I think they are some of the best controversial paints, and I say that because some people will argue that they're student grade, some people will argue that they're professional. I will argue that they're just good paints. Who cares? They're good paints with great pigments and great light fastness to them. So do what you will with that information. Look at that. You can already immediately see the texture starting to show up. Look how gorgeous that is. So again, the granulating pigment in that dust pink is the PBR11, which is pigment brown 11. So there should be PBK 11, pigment black 11, and of course, PB19 is the violet pigment that's in it. So this lets you know that you can just pull a black out that is made up of the pigment PBK11 and mix it with your non-granulating colors, and you're going to get granulation. So you can literally sit up and mix tubes together at home. Take a toothpick, mix them two colors from them tubes together, and literally give it time to dry down to form your own granulated paints. And the thing about Van Gogh's dust line is that all of those granulate simply because of the PBK11 pigment that's in them. Okay. All right. So the next pink we're going to look at is actually a Hortum, Schmincke Hortum, and this is Tundra Pink. Tundra Pink is a gorge. It's pink. It is still a bit cool leaning. It is made up of PB29. Somebody tell me what pigment that is. Somebody tell me what color is PB29. The first person that I see posted, I'm going to send you something in the mail. PB29. What color is that? It's made up of PB29 and it's made up of PR233. So let's take a little swatch here of it. Look at that. Ooh, look at that gorge. Now, I cannot remember who sent me this. I honestly can't. But we're going to spread that out. Let's add a little bit. There we go, Gwen. Ultramarine Blue PB29. That was the first one I saw. So, Gwen, send me an email, thethriftyapprentice.com, and let me know that you won one of the giveaways for this live today. Be sure you drop me your shipping information, and in the next couple of business days, I'm going to get you something in the mail. Yes, PB29 is ultramarine blue. And it is PB29 that is the actual granulating pigment in that mixture, not the PR233. The PR233 is a pigment red that does not granulate. But because that color is mixed with PB29, look at the gorgeous granulation you get in there. Is that not gorgeous? So that lets you know that you can actually take a non-granulating color in a tube, take a super granulating ultramarine blue, and you can mix many different shades of a granulation color because ultramarine blue will mix into anything. You can take a non-granulating sap green, mix it with a lot of ultramarine blue. Now you got this really deep, gorgeous, cool leaning green that's going to granulate and give you texture. So absolutely, look at that. Look. Just I love this. I'm not sure who sent me. It came in a little set that I had. Someone sent me in the mail, and it had some Schminker granulating colors in it. And we're going to pass some other ones in here in a moment. But let's move on. Now, this next color we are looking at is actually a synthetic color. Well, what do you mean, Thrifty? Well, this means that this particular color is not made from anything natural. It was all cooked up in a lab, and it was cooked up with the specific purpose of granulating and causing texture. What I'm speaking of is a Turner Maya color. Now, Maya colors are specific to the Turner brand. They have their own proprietary formula that they use in order to produce these. Now, it does have some drawbacks because the Maya colors, in my opinion, do tend to dry down and have a bit of an issue re-wetting unless you pre-wet them well in advance of using them. And they don't seem to be as saturated, in my opinion, as a lot of other colors. But the thing is, it is really, really hard to find single pigment granulating colors, single pigment granulating reds, single pigment granulating yellows. And I think Turner saw the need for this in the market, which is why they decided to invent their uh, Maya colors. So this is a wonderful option for a granulating red. And yes, of course, Turner does sell their paints open stock, so you don't have to buy an entire set in order to get your hands on this color. Now, you're going to see that naturally, although it has some granulation, it is not as granulating as maybe the first two that we looked at. But then that's where things like what we're going to be talking about a little later on, like granulation medium and salt comes into play because it will help force the granulation out of that even more. You know what I mean? Now, this particular pigment, I'm gonna hold it up where you can see it, is synthetic. It is a VR1. Don't ask me what it stands for. No idea. I just know that it is proprietary to Turner, um, and it's a part of their Maya line. But gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous color. Let's see. Eleanor says, yes, it is a pretty red. It's a gorgeous red. Eleanor says, hi, Eleanor. So what about PV29 violet or permaline violet? Not the same as ultramarine, right? No, ma'am. Not the same as ultramarine. Not the same. PV29. So real quick, just really, really quick. I promise you, I'm not getting into pigment lessons here. but I'm gonna be real quick about this. And I think I taught this in a Patreon class. So if you guys are not a part of Patreon and you really want to learn educational stuff like this, I suggest you sign up. So when you're looking at a pigment number, you basically get two letters X, Y, and then you get a set of numbers behind it. Let's just say 12. Okay. So the two letters that you normally get are the letter P and then whatever color family the color is in. For instance, if it is a red, it'll say PR for pigment red. If it's a blue, it'll say PB for pigment blue. If it's a violet, it'll say PV for pigment violet. If it's a yellow, it'll say PY for pigment yellow. So the first letter stands for pigment, is always a P, and the second letter stands for whatever color family is in. So PV19 is pigment violet 19, whereas PB29, which we know is ultramarine, is pigment blue 29. So PV would be different than PB. So they are not quite the same. However, you do have a color known as ultramarine violet, which is PV29. So it will granulate because it isn't formulated sort of like ultramarine. And we're going to run across one of those here in just a moment. Okay, so let's move on. Next one we're moving into our yellows, and we're going to start with just yellow here. And I don't know, we might not get around to painting anything, but hopefully if we don't, this is all going to be super educational, and just getting to see all of this is going to help somebody somewhere. So let's look at Van Gogh Dusk Yellow for our first yellow color. And this is going to granulate not because it has the P, which is made up of PY128 and PBK11. So the reason this one is going to granulate is because it has the PBK11 in it, which is pigment black 11, which has wonderful granulation to it. So a lot of your granulating colors will granulate specifically because of one pigment that's in it, especially if it's dual pigment. But look at this. Look at this texture. And I need you guys to keep in mind that I'm swatching this on Kent. This is Kentson XL, 140-pound cold pressed acid free paper. This has a pretty smooth sizing and tooth to it. So it's not like the paper is helping push the granulation as far as texture surface. You know, it's helping to push the granulation because it's cellulose and it'll let that water sit on top of the paper longer without absorbing down into it, allowing that pigment time to do its thing and granulate. Look at that. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous yellow. Very, very nice. You can actually see the black pigment, and you'll start to see those two pigments separate. Now, this happens in the dust. You can see here the black and the pink is separated. But here you'll notice that although you get more of a violet because a pigment blue and a pigment red, blue and red makes what? Purple. So you don't necessarily see the split in there. I hope this is making sense. I hope this is making sense. And then, of course, you have like your chameleon colors and your two-tone colors. And we're going to eventually get around to a video about those one day a little later on down the line, because they do kind of fall under the granulation banner as well. But yes, that dust yellow granulates because of the PBK11 or the pigment black 11 in it. So let's move on. Another yellow. We're heading back over to Turner, and we're swatching one of their Maya colors. Now, this one is going to be what? Synthetic, and have a man-made pigment in it. And this one they call SY33. My assumption is that that SY stands for synthetic yellow. That's just me using deductive reasoning, okay? Because again, these are not formulated like a quote unquote regular watercolor, but it is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous warm yellow that when you get enough of it going, will have slight granulation to it, which you can induce or enhance, should I say, if you wanted to, with a granulation medium or salt water. I'm trying to get enough of that on there so once it's, I mean, that hopefully you guys will be able to see the subtle granulation in that. And if not, if you have a color in your palette that doesn't granulate, then just mix it with one that will. All right, next we have another Van Gogh color. This one is dust green, so we're moving into our greens here. This one is made up of PBK 11 and PG7. Now, PG7, pigment green 7, is phthalo green. So basically, what they have done is mixed phthalo green and PBK 11 together. That way, you would have a granulating green. Let's take a look at what we have here. And right away, you can see that PBK11 is an extremely granulating watercolor. So you can almost mix that color with anything to make your shadow color. Mix that PBK11 pigment with anything, making shadow colors, and you will always have a granulating shadow color. So if you want to just buy you a tube of PBK11, which is which black is that? Is it carbon black? I'm having a brain freeze. I can't remember right off the top of my head. I think it's carbon black. Uh, color is PBK. I can't type right now. I just want to double check behind myself. You guys know I hate giving out Mars Black. I'm sorry, Mars Black. PBK7 is Mars Black. So if you want to just buy yourself a tube of Mars Black, you can mix it into any of your other watercolors, and bam, you got you a granulating color. Imagine that, right? Look at that gorgeous granulation. And look how that black kind of splits apart from that phthalo green, giving you this whole two-tone gorgeous look. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I'm checking the comments as I move on. Next, we are going to swatch Van Gogh's Davies Gray. Now, the name of this color is going to fool you because you hear gray and you automatically assume a neutral tone that should be down listed by black with your earth tone. But this one is going to shock you a little bit. Now, this is made up of PBK 11, which is your Mars black. It's made up of PG7, which is phthalo green, and it's made up of PBR7, which is pigment brown 7, which you typically see used for a variety of your earth tone browns, like your burnt umbers, your burnt siennas, colors like that. Van Dyke Brown can even be derived from PBR7. And that is, let's see, I want to make sure I grab 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I want to stay on track. This is number 7. All right. And this is Davies Gray. And it is actually a really muted green leaning granulating color. It's green leaning because of the PG7, the phthalo green in it. It's muted because of the PBR7, the brown that's in it. And then it granulates because of the PBK11, the black that's in it. Are really gorgeous colors. And you're going to start to notice a common theme here. You're going to start to notice that a lot of granulating colors are dual or triple pigment, and they granulate because of one of the colors in it, not because of everything that it's made up of. Let's see. I'm just checking the comment section right quick. Of course, Virginia, you used to glaze over pigment numbers. Now you get it. I am so glad to hear that. I'm so glad to hear that. A class on mixed media. Oh yeah, the Canson XL is a wonderful paper to use for mixed media. Absolutely. I'm glad this is making sense, Virginia. Oh yeah, the dust yellow looks gorgeous in landscapes. Don't you worry yourself. We're gonna get there. We are going to get there. Hopefully. Yes, on a mushroom piece. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Which reminds me, I mean, because you guys remember not too long ago over in the creation station, we were using those muted opaque watercolors, landscapes like this, and these were done with the this is done with those Formuhi opaque muted watercolors, um, which are formulated to be actually more opaque than necessarily granulation. But specialty pigments like that or specialty paints like that really do lend really well to mushrooms. So I can see how using that dust pink would be beautiful. I mean, dust yellow or even a dust pink for that matter would be beautiful in a landscape using mushrooms. And there you can see that Davy's Gray definitely has a muted green undertone. So sometimes paying attention to the color name will throw you off because the pigments that are in the color are actually what depict how it's going to appear on your paper. Another little FYI comment. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. I think I may be over explaining and it's slowing me down. All right, next up we have Hortum. This is Schmincke Hortum, and this color is called Shire Blue. It is made up of PB29, PG26, and PY159. So it is made up of a green color, a yellow color, and what causes it to granulate is the pigment blue 29 in it, which is ultramarine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm on 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. And in its pan, the color actually looks, you'll see. Again, what did I tell you? The name will throw you off sometimes. The names do not always match the hue that the color is going to come out to be. It is the pigments that is in that paint that is going to depict what color you get. Now, of course, the PB29 is what causes it to granulate. The PG26, the pigment green in it, is what gives it its green color. The PY159, which is the yellow in it, is what makes it lean more warm. Gorge. Look at that. Look at the texture. Keep in mind, we're painting on student grade 100% cellulose paper here. Gorgeous color. Gorgeous, gorgeous color. And it's called Shire Blue. Doesn't have green in the name anywhere. All right, we're moving on. Oh, we're jumping into one that people are gonna love. Now, this, my friends, we're about to swatch is Core Viridian PG18. Pigment Green 18 is the actual pigment number for Viridian. Now, what you are going to discover with the Viridian color is that a lot of sets will call a color Viridian, and it is not a true Viridian. It is some derivative of PG6 or 7, which is phthalo green, which is why paying attention to the pigment number when you're looking at the color Viridian can help you depict whether you actually have a true Viridian or whether you have what is known as a hue, something that the factory has made up to imitate viridian. Typically, hues will not granulate. I'm going to say that again. Typically, hues will not granulate because they have been produced to emulate another color. But in this particular case, because Core's Viridian is made up of PG18, the original Viridian pigment, it will and does granulate. 2468. 2468. Um, so you don't necessarily have to have Core's Viridian, but any true Viridian is going to granulate. And it has a gorgeous granulating texture to it. So yes, when you see the word hue, just know that that is something that the factory has come up with, mix of different pigments that they have in their arsenal to emulate the color that is being named after. It is not the original pigment. That's why you see a lot of companies, and that's because the warning labels let you know that things like cats and cobalts and cadmiums, cobalts can be rather dangerous. But I always tell people if you're not spraying it in an airbrush or you're not drinking your paint water, you won't have anything to worry about. You know what I'm saying? And of course, be very, 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 very careful if you have animals and you are using paints that have true cads and cobalts in it. Most student grade paints stay away from it, which is why you have cad red hue, cobalt blue hue. That's why the hue colors were invented. Look at that gorgeous granulation. So you can mix your PG18, your Viridian, your true Viridian into any color, and then bam, all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of granulating greens. You can mix it with a regular yellow. Bam, you got a beautiful yellow green or a beautiful sap green. You can mix it with yellow ochre. Then you got a beautiful granulating olive green. You know, so many different, so many uses, so many uses. Uh, Thank you, Gwen. I appreciate that about the mushroom. We're going to move on. Next, we are swatching Van Gogh. This is turquoise green. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This one has super subtle granulation to it. Super, super subtle. And this is one that I debated about putting in my palette, but I am a turquoise fan and I love turquoise. So yeah, it ended up in here. But it is made up of PB15, which is pigment blue 15, and PB29, which is pigment blue ultramarine. And this one is honestly a little hard to read with. It is a part of the Van Gogh granulating line of colors. It is not a dust color. It's just one of their regular granulators. But because it's not a dust color, it's not super granulating. It just has that mild granulating texture to it. But the granulation is being caused by the PB29 that's in it. I'll just hold it up so you can see that a little bit better. Okay. Next up, we are going to be swatching a color from from probably my favorite budget student grade paint. I'm sorry, we're not supposed to be using student grade anymore. We're supposed to call them artist paints now. So my favorite budget artist paint, which is Artwell. Now this is a color you can add to, and we've been talking about it. This is ultramarine blue, PB29, just straight up ultramarine blue. And I have found that Artwell's ultramarine blue has one of the most beautiful granulating textures to it. Look at that. Look how it split apart time it hit the paper. Just crazy. I love that color so much. Notice it's the only pen in the entire palette I made up that's a full pen because I know I'm going to use a lot of it. I'm going to use a lot of it. And typically when I make up my own palettes, I'll do that. I'll put the colors that I might not use as much in half pans, or for the most part, put colors in half pans. But those that I know I'm going to use a lot, I put them in full pans. So I don't have to refill as much. like my ultramarine blue, my yellow ochre, my burnt sienna, my burnt umber, anything that I know I use on just like every single painting basis typically ends up in a full pan. But there you go. Look at that gorgeous granulation. And that is Artwell's Tube Ultramarine. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Is that not just crazy gorgeous? Mix it with anything on your palette, bam, every color you mix automatically has granulation. Moving on. This is Shinhan PWC Cerulean Blue. And this is a true, well, no, this is actually a hue. This is a hue. This is one of the exceptions. I don't know what Shinhan did to this paint for it to have mild granulation to it because it was really throwing. Look at this. Look at how gorgeous that color is. And people ask me, why is Shinhan and Magello Mission Gold your favorite watercolors? How could you not love a paint company that produces watercolors this saturated? How could you not love it? I don't get it. Look at that. Look at the texture. And that's actually a hue color. But they're using PB15 colon 3, which is a different derivative of like a phthalo blue color. You can even see the phthalo leaning green in the actual color. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. They say it's a hue, but I question whether that's a hue because that's actually they did a real good job making that one. That's all I can say. I say I can't question it. You can't question anything you want to, but there's something they are not being transparent about with that color. I just feel that from the bottom of my heart. We're going to move on. This next one is another synthetically made color. We're going back over to Turner, and this is Turner's Maya Blue. And of course, it is PB82, which it has synthetic enhancements to it in order to be a proprietary color for them. And notice that all of these pigments and all of these colors I found, I'm not like really soaking my paper. I'm just pre-wetting the paper and right away you're getting to see the granulation. And that's what I meant by that turquoise green. It has a little granulation to it, but it's super subtle. It's not nearly as intense as the other colors that we've been looking at. It does sound like a fun course, Virginia. It really does. I mean, Virginia and Caitlin. I'm just kind of glancing over that conversation you guys are having about the mixed media course. It does sound pretty interesting. I don't have, the thing is, there aren't, maybe I'm just not looking, but I haven't found many like open live art courses, especially geared towards watercolor specifically in the Dallas area. And that's one of the reasons I want to kind of venture out into doing them myself. Next up, we're looking at Turner Turquoise Blue. This is PB28. This is not a hue. This is the true. Wait a minute. Do I have that in the right place? I hope I had it in the right place. Hold on, fam. Because that does not look right. Feel like I did. I skipped one. I skipped one. So let's back this pony up. I'm going to say something didn't feel right with what I was about to do. This is turquoise blue. I might have to switch those labels up. So Maya blue is what we're going to swatch now. So I have these two backwards. So this is actually Turner Turquoise Blue PB28. It is the true turquoise pigment, so it's not mixed with anything and it's going to granulate. So if you're looking for your turquoises that are going to granulate, you're going to be looking for PB28, the pigment blue. Now, what we're about to swatch here is Maya's, I mean, good grief, Turner Maya blue. And this is PB82. I had to think about it. This is PB82 because I got them backwards, so it threw me off. Because I was about to swatch Does Pink here and Does Violet here, and I was like, no, that's not right. I skipped something. My bad. So those two are reversed. This one is the Turner Maya blue that I'm swatching now, and the one that I swatched before was the Turner turquoise blue. Both of them beautiful granulation, PB82 or PB28. Are these granulating colors you picked from your stash? Yes, ma'am. They all of these are two colors that I had in different brands, and instead of buying granulating watercolors, I just started going through my swatch sheets because I keep all of my swatches from everything I review, and then cross referencing that with handprint.com and Google searches to figure out what I already had in my own stash that contained granulating pigments. Now, this is the Van Gogh Dust Pink, and Dust Pink is PBK11 and PV23. So there's Pigment Black 11, which makes it granulate, and PV23, Pigment Violet 23, which gives it its beautiful violet color. And I think PV23 is the oxazine violet, right? I believe so. Might be wrong. I think it is. I think I'm right now. Gorgeous granulating color. So yeah, I definitely encourage you before you spend the money. The cerulean reminds me of a bird color from Holbein. Holbein, yeah, it's a beautiful color. So before you go spend, a bunch of money on a granulating watercolor set, if you're like me and you already have a bunch of supplies, take time to pay attention to those pigment numbers if you have them, because you very well may be able to put an entire granulating watercolor set together based on what you have already without having to spend any money. This next one, oh, this is one of the newer additions to my watercolor family, but this is Da Vinci Ultramarine Violet. This is a gorgeous color. Now, ultramarine violet is PV15 with Da Vinci, single pigment, and it has very subtle texture to it. Very, very subtle texture, which of course you can enhance with salt water or granulated medium. And yes, we are going to get to that in just a second. I'm almost done with the swatching. I'm going to set all of these to the side to let them dry. All right. So there is the first page of the swatches. You guys, somebody might want to maybe you want to screenshot that to use it as a color reference to kind of go through your colors and see if you have anything. Yes, very, very regal, very Victorian. I agree so much with that, Virginia. Um, the ultramarine violet is your favorite so far, isn't it, gorge? It's gorge. All right. I'm going to, this is one of the reasons I love perforated pages in my sketchbooks. I'm going to see if I can get this out of here without destroying anything. So I can sit it to the side, and I'm trying not to tear. Oh crap, whatever. Come out. Okay. And there's our first swatch page. So I'm gonna sit that to the side so it can dry. I was trying to be all cute and tear it on a perforated, whatever. Let's pull it out the book. And I have a bigger swatch book that if I tear anything out of my spiral bound swatch book that I put it in. Last night as I was going through these swatches in order to put together this palette, I discovered I have one, two, three, four, five swatching books. And one of them is actually a binder that is full of swatches this thick. One day maybe I'll sit down and we'll just do a video on going through swatches, looking at different paints based on their swatches, and me telling you how I kind of feel about those paints. All right, next up, we're going to be swatching. We're down, we got three left. Now we're moving into Schminke Quartum Galaxy Violet. Now, this is a mixture of PR 233, which is pigment red 233, and PB29, which we have discussed 100 times so far, is ultramarine blue. And let's just see what this looks like. This is called Galaxy Violet. Galaxy Violet. And it is so pretty for skies, and literally what it's saying, creating a galaxy painting. But it will be so pretty in your skies. It would be gorgeous for mixing to make shadow neutrals that has a little purple undertone to it. And of course, it is purple, although it doesn't have a violet pigment in it, because red and blue mixed together makes what? Purple. Oh, look at it. I actually like Schminke, and the three Quartum paints we've looked at are all a part of the Schminke super granulating watercolor set. Okay. Next up, we're gonna move to Burnt Sienna, and this is by Van Gogh. This is not a part of their dust colors, but it is made up of PBR7. And you guys heard me tell you earlier in this stream that PBR7 can be used to make different earth browns, from burnt sienna to burnt umber to Van Dyke brown to sometimes the color could just be called brown. But it is a beautiful semi-granulating earth pigment that you can pretty much find. Well, I was trying to say you can pretty much find it in any set, but I'm gonna be honest. A lot of budget sets tend to use PR 101, pigment red 101, which is like this really earthy brownish red when they're doing burnt sienna or burnt umber. But if you want one that's going to granulate, you need to be looking for PBR7. You need to be looking for your tube of either burnt sienna or burnt umber or that brown that is made up of PBR7. And as you can see, we're getting some sort of medium to mild granulating texture. And of course, if you mix it with other colors, it makes gorgeous granulating colors. And of course, if you're like me and you like to mix your neutral from using a blue and a brown, could you imagine what it would look like mixing ultramarine blue and that together in order to make your shadow colors? Oh my goodness. So much texture it would have. Oh yeah, went back and looked at the swatches. Absolutely. I was like, why am I finna spend all this money? Because I was about to buy a bunch of different granulating watercolor sets in order to do this live. And I was like, wait, why would I do that? Let me just go look and see what I have already. And I was able to literally put together a complete color range of granulating watercolors going across the entire rainbow spectrum without spending another dime based on what I've already had. Now, my friends, here we have PBK11, known as Mars or Oxide Black. And this is the black that we've seen mixed into all of Van Gogh's dust colors. This one individual color is what gave all those other colors its granulation. So it's the miggity, 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 miggity Mac Daddy. Hey, who remembers crisscross? Crisscross that make you jump, jump. Um, yes, look at that. Gorge, 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 gorge. Yeah, that's how I get my dopamine too. Listen, I wasn't judging me or you. I wasn't being judgy. I was like, no, because I had so many of those sets in my cart that I was looking at, like, before the decimal point, triple digits. I was like, no, 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 what are you doing? This particular community is full of kindred spirits. I'm gonna add a little bit more to that. All right, friends and family. So there you got to see the granulating watercolor set I have put together. And this is just normal granulation, right? This is just buying or having colors that normally granulate, or if you were to buy a granulating set, having colors that normally granulate or whatever. So that's what a lot of those look like. Now, let's, and which was the first way I was telling you I was going to introduce you to granulation. Now, let's talk about the second way I want to introduce you to granulation, which is granulation medium. Well, Thrifty, what is this stuff? This granulation medium you keep talking about. What exactly is it? Well, friends, it's an additive. That's the best way to describe it. It's an additive that you can either add to your water bucket. And when I say your water bucket, when you're using granulation medium, let's talk about a couple of maintenance techniques that I would suggest. I would suggest you use a two bucket system, one bucket for rinsing and one clean bucket water for actually grabbing your clean water to paint with. You want to add the granulation medium to your clean bucket water, not the one that you're using to clean your brush. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, keep in mind the more water you have that you add this to, the more you're going to be diluting the strength of your granulation medium. So, diluting it in your water might not cause it to induce granulation as much as adding it directly to your wash. Hopefully that makes sense. So, what we're going to do for today's experiment is we're just going to be adding it directly to our wash versus me putting it in my water. Because I don't always change my water for every painting, and I'm not sure that the next painting I do, I'm going to want extreme granulation in it. You know what I mean? So that's why, you just kind of have to make the best decision based on your circumstances at that moment. What's the best for you? Now, there are many different companies out there that make granulation media. This one just happens to be Windsor and Newton, but you can even get it in generic brands. I know there are several like um, Artist Loft makes a granulation medium. Hobby Lobby's Master Touch makes a granulation medium. Um, Core makes a granulation medium. Jerry's Autorama Soho makes a You can just find it in. Daniel Smith makes a granulation medium. So the branding doesn't really matter. I do know that some of them might cause granulation a little bit more than others, but for the most part, they're all pretty universal and do the exact same thing. So, you think that the swatch flip through video would be cool? Listen, I don't know how cool you gonna think it is when you understand how many different watercolor sets I actually have. Like in a second, I'll go grab those books and I'll just kind of sit them on screen so you can get a real good picture of how much. And it's gonna kind of be embarrassing because I'm really gonna be giving away exactly how much paint I have in my studio. And don't nobody talk about me. Keep in mind that I do this for a profession and I review products. Okay. All right. So Commonplace. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of granulation medium on my palette there. That's way too much. Way too much, but it is what it is. All right. And let's find one of our colors that didn't granulate as much as others. I think this is going to be the best way to do this. I'll have to slide Ollie to the side. I'm sorry, Ollie. You know, Ollie likes being on camera with us, and he be sitting here subliminally talking to me and keeping me encouraged to keep going. And sometimes when I get stuck in my head, I look at Ollie and bam, I can automatically remember what I'm saying because you know he's communicating with me through telepathy. I told y'all I was silly. I told y'all once I really loosened up and just started being completely me, I was silly. I'm a nerd. I have fantasy mind. I sit up and think of all types of fantastical stories all day. Um, absolutely. I should have been a fictional writer. So let's see. Well, we had the Turner Meyer yellow, which just had really subtle granulation. We had the Turner Meyer red, which only had subtle granulation. Um, And I'm pretty sure that we probably could have got much more granulation out of these had I been using a much heavier water consistency. But I didn't want this to take all day to dry, so we can just kind of look at them and talk about them. The Turner Turquoise Blue didn't have as much granulation as the rest of them. The Van Gogh Turquoise Green, mild granulation. And that PWC started out with looking like heavy granulation in it, but now I understand more why it's called the hue because this is very super subtle. So maybe we should use something like that one in order to see how that granulation medium works, right? Let me see. And then we'll kind of add it to like our burnt umber so that you can see how it works on a color you might commonly have in your actual watercolor palette, right? Okay, so let me move this around, and the first one we're going to try with the granulation medium. Maybe I should have, let's write it down. The first one we're going to try, let's go down here. We're going to do, oh, that's not writing. Need something that writes. Here we go. Hopefully this one writes. Okay, we're going to do granulating medium plus PWC cerulean. Would you write blue hue? And of course, we know the pigment number is PB15 colon 3. All right, let's see how we rock the boat on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a 12th color. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. All right. Throw some water over in that, and I'm gonna make this wash right here. Okay. Make sure we get enough pigment and enough water. Now I'm going to pick up a little of that granulation medium on my brush and mix it directly into that wash. And I am having to clean my brush every time I go into that granulation medium because I'm doing it this way. I don't want to contaminate it. What I would typically do is make the wash and then just use like an eyedropper and drop a drop of that granulation medium into the wash. But that's not quite how I'm doing it today. All right. So first things first, I'm the realist. We're gonna go ahead and swatch this. I wanna swatch it with water on the paper. So let's wet this spot where we're going to swatch it. Keeping in mind that granulation is induced by what? Water. And as I was saying earlier, always keep in mind that how much granulation appears does have to do with the paper you're painting on as well. So here's what we're going to do. Now, see, you can already see the difference. And we're going to sit this one here with the granulation medium in it and a lot of this water. And what we're going to do is get it time to dry, and then we'll compare this swatch to the original one and see which one did better originally or with adding the granulation medium to it. All right. What's another color we can test? Because we're going to use this row down here to test the salt water. Okay, Virginia. Go walk. I understand you have to watch your poochie. Caitlin says, I have found that the schminkel ones take extra time to make sure you spray them down. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those schminkel ones are the hardest ones to re-wet, or have been the hardest ones to re-wet, actually. Oh, I didn't write what we're going to have here. What are we going to have here? Right here, we're going to be doing the, I should have gotten me up. All of a sudden, none of my pens want to write. So we're going to be using granulating, medium, plus, let's do the Van Gogh burnt umber, and that is PBR, which stands for pigment brown 7. So let's get a little wash of that going. We'll put this one right here next to it. And we're gonna, and keep in mind now you can add your granulation medium the way I'm doing directly to your washes, or you can add it to the water that you use, your clean water, not your rinse water. So you would need a 2 water system, right? Okay. Just want to make sure that I'm making all of this clear for you guys. And this is information that anybody watching in replay, it's going to actually kind of be hard to edit this particular live because there's so much information in it. There's so much information in it. I might not edit it. I might leave it alone. Anybody interested in watching it would just have to watch the entire thing. I'm just going to add a little granulation medium to that. I don't know. Maybe a little bit more. Ooh, you can even see that splitting apart in the actual wash before I even put it on the paper. So this one should be really interesting. Let's just get us some water down here. And you can see from that cerulean, definitely different from over there. Already you can see that it's different. And it's cool that I'm putting this one right up under the original swatch. That way we can see the active difference side by side. And this is got our granulation medium. Now we're going to also test this out with a non-granulating paint, the granulation medium, so we can see what happens. Okay. Now what would happen? Let's experiment. We're experimenting, right? We're experimenting. That way you guys can get to see all these different things you can use. What would happen if we use the granulating medium? We mix it with 2 colors that we use to make a neutral. Let's mix it with ultramarine and burnt umber. So basically we'll be using PB29, we'll be using PBR7. And we're going to mix that with granulation medium. Now, let's see what happens here. Let's go with ultramarine, which is what I normally use as the base to make my shadow colors. I do like for my shadow colors to lean cool. So we're going to use that warm blue, which already has granulating properties to it. We're going to use, and then we're going to mix that with the brown, which is going to neutralize the blue and give me a gray or a black. The more blue you add to it, the more black leaning it's going to become. And you can make this color mixture at home yourself. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna is going to make it lean more warm. Burnt umber is going to make it lean more cool. And then we are going to add granulation medium to it as well. Because that's what this section is about, the granulating medium. Let's add a little bit more here, because why not? And then let's, I'm about to say let's not wet, but we're going to stick to the same rules. I want you guys to get used to the fact that these effects work better when the surface is really kind of wet and saturated. That's not to say you can't paint wet on dry and not get granulation. You can. You just have your best chance at granulation with wet into wet. All right, let's go ahead and grab some of this neutral. Now keep in mind, I just made this one up myself. It's made from PB29, ultramarine blue, and PBR, pigment brown, and then we added some granulation medium to it. So here is another way for you to make your own granulating watercolor. Woo, art companies are gonna eventually hate me. To make your own granulating watercolors without spending $100 on a granulation set. Can you see that beautiful color? It's gorgeous. And it's gonna have a lot of granulation to it because not only is it made from colors that granulate, it also has a granulating medium in it. And we made our own black gray. How you like them apples? Okay, I think we might have a point about granulation. Let's see. So we didn't have it do too much to, I mean, it added a little bit more texture here, not much more. So, you probably would need to add a lot of granulating medium to that one. But we'll try that one again with the salt water and see if that makes any difference. Um, then here you can see the difference between the drying of the regular PBR7 on its own and then how it looks with the granulation medium put into it, right? Now, and then here you're going to see where we made our own black. We used PB29, which is ultramarine blue. We used PBR7, which is burnt umber. We added granulation medium. And as you can see, we made our very own color that not only granulates, but that splits apart to become two-tone. How about them apples? So you can work all of this stuff out on your own, family. You really can. Uh, oh, Terry, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Ollie, I always join in. Listen, let me tell you something. Ollie keeps me sane. Caitlin says Windsor and Newton put theirs on sale on Black Friday last year, and I got it for $5. Oh, that's an amazing deal. That's an amazing deal. Can I do a magenta or a red? Absolutely. You want me to do that with the granulation medium, you mean? Sure, I sure will. Because we're finna experiment doing one with that's not a naturally granulating color. Uh, have I experimented with gouache? I have not used gouache and granulating medium, Kaylin. I don't know that there would be a reason not to try it. I mean, hey, let's try it. Let's see. I mean, we're here, right? We're doing. We're here. I gonna say something. Can't say that. You know, really dollars. But here I have Turner Designer Gouache sitting right here on my desk. Here, let's do it. Let's see. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. We're gonna be using granulating medium plus what is this? Turner Gouache, and we will be using. I don't know. I don't know the color names off the top of my head, but let's go for one of these reds. Here, we'll just call it a bright red. I don't know what the name is right now. I don't have the swatch sheet in front of me. But let's see. Oh, look, I stuck my hand. I hate that. Wasting all that paint. Ugh, that sucks. I can't tell y'all how much that just upset me. It's okay. Worst things have happened, right? It's people out there dying. The last thing I need to be worried about is, oh, I'm sorry. YouTube don't like that word. It's people out there being unalived. Last thing I should be worried about is smudging paint. Uh, yep, watercolor granulation, and is it Antony, and I don't know. I don't want to mess it up. I think Antony. Um, so let's see. We're gonna do this gouache color, and because I don't know what color it is, I can't tell you what pigment is in it. Sorry. But we're just trying gouache here. And yes, I dry my gouache down in pellets like watercolor because I like to paint from dry down paint. And what we're going to do here is, now this is going to be interesting because gouache is opaque, right? And the pigment particles in gouache are already super heavy already. And the more you dilute it, the lighter the color is going to be. So this should turn out to be a pretty interesting experiment right here. All right, let's get some granulation medium in that. I'm gonna pour all of the water out of my brush. Let me move this before I put my hand in it again, and you guys are gonna hear me use profanity next time. So let me move that. And then I'll sop up some granulation medium. We'll come over here and mix it into this gouache. Rinse again. I'm trying not to contaminate that medium. I'm almost out of that little pile I made anyway, so maybe next time. Now, see, now what this is going to do is this is going to water this wash down to more like an opaque watercolor. You watch what I tell you. So I guess in that case, you probably could. The answer would be yes, you could use it with gouache because it's going to go down to being an opaque watercolor. But let's see how much granulation we're going to actually get. That's a gorgeous red. Jeez. The Thrifty Apprentice at gmail.com. I don't know. I'm seeing something happen there now. I don't know. I am seeing something happen there. Hey, look at us discovering things together. Now that's pretty damn cool. That's pretty cool. If it keeps that same texture when it dries, that just opened up a whole new world for me. Let's see. Let's see if they. Oh, look at that. Look how gorgeous that one we made together is. I love that. Look at all the different kind of like cloudy textures in it. Like, could you not see that in a stormy sky? Oh, love that. All right. So that's basically granulation medium. We were supposed, I'm up here, I'll use this little section up here because we wanted to do it with a regular watercolor, right? One more experiment with the granulation medium, and then we're going to call that one good. And we're going to move on to the salt because at this point we are 11, 12, 1, 2 hours in. So, yeah, we might not get around to painting anything. This might just end up being or maybe we'll do a part two. And next live, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll do a part two. And next live, we'll actually use the actual granulating palette and mediums and the salt water to paint something with. Um, I'm trying to find a watercolor palette that's just a regular palette right quick. Okay, here, I don't know. This is the little Meeden, one of those little Meeden travel palette, the Meeden travel palette that came inside the Meeden Advent calendar. We are all pretty aware that this is not even a professional paint, so more than likely it definitely doesn't have any granulation to anything. Let's see what it's like if we, I need to put it here. This is Meeden watercolor plus granulation medium. I have no idea what these pigment numbers are off the top of my head. Let's do this yellow. I think that'll make something really easy to see, right? Oh, wait, somebody asked me about a magenta. There's not a magenta in this one. Let's see if I can find a magenta real quick. What else do I have sitting around here? Okay, here. This is my Paul Rubens Chrome. So up here we have Paul Rubens Chrome Chow May, however you want to say it. And then down here we have the Supervision 24 half pan set, one of their 24 half pan sets. But let's see here. Let's get this color. Don't know what it is off the top of my head, but let's just grab it. And we'll mix it directly into the little pan we just had that granulation medium in. So let's make a puddle of it. And I'm not going to have to worry about rinsing this one. We're just going to make a puddle of that and trying to make sure I get enough pigment. Because here's the thing, a color can granulate and it won't look like it granulate if you're not using enough pigment in your wash. Keep in mind, that's very important. It needs to be a balance of water and pigment, not just a lot of water, but you need to have enough pigment in there to do something inside the water, right? So here, let's put just a. I wish I had an eyedropper here with me. Do I? I thought I had one. That I kept somewhere that's got a blue. Mm, I want to try to put just a drop of this. Yeah. Okay. Feel like that might have been too much, but hey, let's roll with it and see what happens because we are testing granulation medium with a completely non-granulating color. Let's get that all mixed in really well. I'll rake that off of my brush. We will wet the surface. I said medium. That's not medium. This is Paul Rubin. Let's wet this area. and see what we have with this more magenta leaning or deep rose color with the granulation medium added directly to the wash. And we're going to get to see whether this completely non-granulating color is going to end up with texture because we use the granulation medium in it. All right, we need to get that's such a gorgeous color. Those Paul Rubens Chome paints are I actually prefer them over Medium Pretty Excellent. Look at that. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Such a gorgeous color. The Primatex granulating colors. I just don't have any. That's why there's none in this palette. I mean, had I had Primatex in the tube, then more than likely, as long as they were super granulating color, they would have ended up amongst these. But all of the Daniel Smith paints I have are in half pans. I didn't have anything that I could pan up from the tube. Keep in mind that all of these that I put together were made from tubes that I have. That has nothing to do with all of the sets I have that are just that I bought in half pan form. So yeah, that's why there's no Daniel Smith in here. All of the Daniel Smiths that I've purchased have been either sticks because I prefer to buy their paint stick, which is pure pigment, which costs just as much as the tube, but it's actually a lot more paint because it's a pure pigment stick. Or I buy their half pans. Okay, let's see. I don't know. Looks like we might get some texture there, just a little bit anyway. We'll see when it dries. I'm still not impressed with that cerulean over there, even with the granulation medium added to it. Here for our Turner gouache, not bad. It added mild texture to it, maybe more granulation medium. Um, would cause it to granulate more, but you know, you're not trying to use a whole bottle of granulation medium in one color. And then also keep in mind what I was talking about earlier, where if you add this to your actual water, you're going to be diluting it even more. So could you imagine how much less texture they would actually have in it if I hadn't have been adding the medium directly to the paint mixture versus using the water itself? So something to think about. All of these are things for you to think about for what you like and what you don't like. All right. Next, we are moving on to our final phase of testing, and we're going to be doing some salt water mixtures. So, we're going to be first, we're just going to do a sprinkle salt effect. That way, we'll have a baseline, right? And then next, we'll do salt water. And I want to give this uh, PWC cerulean another shot to see if we're going to get it to granulate at all. Let's see. We can do salt water, and let's do what was another one that didn't granulate too much? Let's go with the Van Gogh turquoise green because I love turquoise green. And that is PB15 and PB29. So basically, it's going to have the granulating ultramarine in it already, and we're going to try to induce that with salt, push that granulation even more. Yes, Gwen, get you some granulation medium. Yes, experiment, Kaylin, absolutely. Yes, Gwen, with the granulation medium, you can basically force granulation with most watercolors. Yeah, it did. It added some granulation to the gouache. It did. It sure did. It added some texture to it because we know gouache normally dries really flat and matte. But there you can see we have these little patches of texture in there. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you can try the salt first. We're getting to that. You might even like the salt better. So just hold your horses before you decide which one you want to grab. Because you can go buy an entire thing of salt, a huge thing of salt, for half of what you would probably pay for the bottle of granulation medium anyway. So if you guys caught, was it Patreon? When did I do that salt class? When did I do the salt class? Was it last week on Patreon? It had to be. So, if you're a part of the Creation Station, we actually just had a salt class where I showed you guys a shortcut I use when I'm using salt. Yeah, it was a Patreon class. Absolutely. I'm remembering what it was. We did the frosty window pane, and I showed you guys a trick on how you can use your hair dryer to lessen the time of the salt technique and still get the texture you want. So we did the frosted window panes where we got frost around the windows using the salt technique and a little frost throughout the image using the salt technique. And I showed you guys how you could grab a um, a hair dryer after giving the salt technique time to start to take effect and still go ahead and dry your paper fast without disturbing that technique taking place too much. So yeah, um, we were just literally talking about this over in Creation Station. So let's see. This one we'll do salt water and let's see. Oh, let's do a regular color. We need to do something regular, just regular old lolly doll. Where is we'll use that same child made paint set. I don't know. We'll do a let's do tree green, which is their version of sap green. Um, and I can't tell you what the pigment is right now because I don't have that sitting here with me. Now, for salt, the baseline would be a wet the area, and you want to get it good and nice and juicy. Okay. This one does require a lot of water when you're doing the direct salt technique. I'm going to take that, and to that, I'm going to add, let's do something that's definitely going to show that salt technique. I think this is like a Gamboge color. Look at how gorgeous that yellow is. Might be a green gold. I can't remember what this color is exactly. But I'm putting down lots of pigment because it takes a lot of pigment for the direct to paper salt technique to work. Add even a little more water to that because you can never have too much. The way this works is by absorbing or sucking the water in towards the salt particles. So you do need water, water, water for this particular one to work. All right. Now, before that dries, you want to grab your salt and you will sprinkle it into whatever you're painting, and you'll do it selectively because you'll be surprised at the type of texture this is going to cause. All right, I'm gonna sprinkle a little salt in there. I found that the Daniel Smith sticks didn't activate very easily. I know that they are cheaper, so I started there and it just didn't work. I love them. I do. I don't have any issues with them. I mean, I pre-spray them like I do everything else, but I don't. I haven't had any issues with them. I will admit that they are harder. They are a tad bit harder to re-wet than like say a regular half pan would be. I won't disagree with that, but I don't have that much of an issue with it, especially due to the fact that they're so much more cost effective. And I personally think that although Daniel Smith paints are great, a lot of those colors are overpriced. But that's just my opinion. Um, but overall, Daniel Smith overall as a paint is worth it. Okay, so now the next way you could do this is I'll actually add a little bit more salt to it. It feel like it may have been so much water that it actually ate up some of the salt. And that's the thing about the direct to paper salt technique. You have to be careful. You want the right balance because too much water will actually dissolve the salt and you won't get any effect. Too little water and there's not enough water for the salt to do its thing and you won't get any effect. You guys, I have painted myself blue from that paint. I got that blue paint everywhere. I'm gonna enjoy myself a good old shower after this live and heat me up some of those leftovers from last night because they were good. All right. I need to. I want to lessen the amount of water I'm using, so I'm gonna grab. Okay. All right. So I'm grabbing a little water here, and I'm using. I had to go get a clear glass because I want you guys to be able to see this. So here I have a clear glass of water that I've only filled about halfway. And here I have salt. So I'm literally gonna just sprinkle salt. And the more salt, the more granulation, supposedly. I'm just gonna put it all in there. I'm just trying to prove a point, right? That's probably way too much, whatever. Take my brush and I'm gonna stir it around and give it salt water time to work. Keep in mind that salt is actually going to dissolve better in lukewarm water than it will in extremely cold water. FYI, but anybody who cooks pretty much knows that. All right, now let's get to crack it like and let's try this stuff out. Let's see what we got going on. And move this down a little bit here. And first things first, we're going to start with that PWC cerulean, that one that I just got all over myself. Let's grab a little bit of that. We'll mix it out on the palette. And then I'm going to be using salt water to make my, and I'm going to be very careful with this because what you don't want to do is contaminate your palette with salt, right? Your palette with salt water. And you also may want to consider using a plastic palette whenever you do this. Because if you're using metal and that salt water stays on there long enough, it might corrode it. I won't promise you that that won't happen. I just picked up a little bit more of that cerulean. I really need to get that time to completely dry before I try to use it again. And I'm mixing it with salt water. And we're going to see if that is going to make a difference at all. All right. I'm actually going to use salt water to wet the area. And as you can see, the salt has all dissolved in that water. It's gone back to being clear. And then we are going to swatch. Let's see. if this is going to do better than the granulation medium did, causing this particular color to granulate. Don't know. We're going to have to let it sit for a second to see what happens, because the salt water, is, I saw somebody mention earlier, does take a little time to let it do its natural thing. All right. Let's see. What else? We wanted to try the turquoise green and see if we can get it to granulate a little bit better. And that was before. See, Maya blue. That's that one. Ultramarine. Turquoise green. That's this one. Now I rinsed my brush out to try to get all of the salt out before I took it over to my palette, okay? So what I'm doing in order to get the paint out the palette, I'm not using salt water. I'm gonna make my puddle first. And this color doesn't read wet all that well either. You know, you just have colors that are like that. There are colors that are like that. They just don't read wet well. All right. Now I'm gonna mix salt water into that. I'm gonna try rinse my brush, wipe it off. I'm trying to pull pigment because keep in mind that this particular technique takes enough pigment and enough salt water to work. And see, this one always confuses me because even here, it has very mild granulation, but no more than it was in its natural form, which has very mild granulation. Now, with the salt water, I can start to see granulation, but when it dries, I'm not sure if this is exactly how it's going to be. So I'm using that salt water to with my swatching area. And we're going to compare all of this. We're almost done. I know I've had you guys for a while. And let's go in here with this and see what we get. Now you can see what's happening over there with the direct to salt, direct to paper technique. And mind you, that's from a color that has no granulation properties to it at all. I'm starting to see some really mild texture there, really, for real. I think it did kind of, maybe it enhanced it. I don't know. I'm not sure how this one is going to do. Feel like I need to use the direct to salt, direct to paper technique with that one. See if I can. Ooh, well, there we go. I was gonna say, let me see if I can get some salt particles out of there, but without a doubt, it happened. Yay, Caitlin! Hopefully everything went well. He's safe getting to his house. In case you guys don't know what that is, that's the house, the home, the crib, to his house. Oh yeah, I'm very hip. All right. Um, why am I wetting it with that? I wanted to wet that with salt water. What am I doing? Salt water. And we are going to make up, we're using regular watercolor again, which we did that over there already. So we know it's going to work with the regular watercolor, but you know, let's see how it's going to work with being mixed directly into water here. Let's see. I really shouldn't have used that just then to mix into my pan, but I'm really trying to get enough pigment out of here. And plus, it won't bother me if my green granulates for a couple of paintings. Add some salt water to that. And go ahead and get that on the paper. And then we're just going to make sure that we're adding enough pigment and enough water to make sense. That way we can see if we're going to get granulation. And maybe I had too much water and too little salt, even though I reduced the amount of water I was using. And now that it's starting to dry, the texture is starting to settle out. The way it's working or going to work seems to work the best is with the direct to paper technique. And again, I think that the reason this is because maybe I diluted too little salt into too much water. That's okay though. I'm just sprinkling salt everywhere. Okay, we actually need to get that time to dry. And while we're giving all of that time to dry, we're going to take a look back at the different things we've talked about as we start to wrap this up. And hopefully, this will have dried completely by the time we look at it. If I need to grab the hair dryer really, really quickly, I will. See if I can get everything on screen. Okay, so we've looked at naturally granulating colors or colors that are formulated to granulate from the factory. And you see that you don't necessarily have to buy granulating sets. You can look for the pigment numbers that granulate. You can actually mix your own granulating colors, as we did right here with this beautiful neutral gray that we mixed. Um, and we added granulation medium to it, but we also used two colors that or two pigments that granulate naturally. Um, Hello, Ella. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Ella. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I really, really am. Know that what makes super granulating watercolors or granulating watercolors special are the pigments that they're made up of. This is just one reason I typically encourage people who say that artist information gives them a headache. I always say, I understand. But I always encourage that if you can, every now and then, just every now and then, learn just a little bit about the artist's information because you'll be surprised at how important it is for a lot of different things. In this case, what's important about artist information is knowing what pigments actually make up your granulating watercolors so that you can be aware whether you can just mix those yourself and not spend $100 on a 12 tube super granulating set. Because let's be clear, granulating watercolors are hyped and marketed now. Therefore, they are marked up. And there's a good chance you can make a lot of those colors at home. Second thing we talked about, which is another great way to tackle granulation, is to use a granulation medium, an additive that you add to either your watercolors or colors that you know happen to already have mild granulation to them in order to induce that granulation and cause it to work more or heavier. For instance, um, here we have granulation medium and burnt umber. There's the regular burnt umber before. Look at the difference. Although we had mild granulation in the regular burnt umber straight out of the pan, once we add the granulation medium to it, look at the different textures and effects we get in that beautiful paint. Even when you look at the ones that didn't have a huge shift, you can see that there was definitely a difference. Here we have the cerulean blue directly out the pan. Very loud, very light, I'm sorry, very mild granulation. Then you jump over to the same swatch that has a little bit of granulation medium. And although it didn't induce it too much, it did add a little bit more texture to it, right? And then, of course, here you can already see the effect being taken with the salt. I just sprinkle a little salt in there, bam, boom. You got granulation and spots and speckles. And of course, the more it dries, the more it's going to do its thing. Here, you can, oh, well, let's not jump there yet. Let's finish talking about what we're talking about with the granulation medium. You can even mix your very own granulating colors. You don't have to buy them. For instance, we know that PB29, which is ultramarine blue, is a naturally granulating color on its own. So you can mix PB29 with a lot of other different colors in order to create a granulating color. You can even induce that granulation even more by adding a granulating medium or even salt to it. So here you can see we're getting this gorgeous, almost chameleon color effect where not only can you see the granulation, but you can also see the blue and the brown are separating in the wash and drying, creating this gorgeous kind of cloudy, misty, murky goodness. And we made that ourselves. Okay. Here you can see that we added granulation medium to gouache. This was definitely an experiment in babysitting for today. I had no idea of taking it in that direction, and I appreciate the suggestion for the comment section. But you can see we were able to take gouache, water it down to opaque watercolor form, add granulation medium to it, and now we have a paint that normally dries flat and matte, actually having texture to it. How cool is that? How cool is that? So there you go. Yes, you can use granulation medium with the gouache and get mild granulation. Who knew? Who knew? Okay. So the third way of getting granulation that we talked about was salt, which has an A and a B. A, you can add the salt directly to the paper, which in my opinion is how you get the most expressive um, texture. It's how you're going to get the harshest and the most expressive. It's going to be super in your face, as you can see. We started off by using a completely non-granulating student grade watercolor, and we sprinkle salt in it. Look at the beautiful texture and granulation it's forming. And that's not even completely dry yet. So by the time it does completely dry, it's going to have even more texture to it. Here, we took that same salt and we added it to the same cerulean blue that we did the first swatch from directly from the pan. The second swatch where we added granulation medium, which is actually the substance intended to force granulation. But then you get down here to where I added the salt, and all of a sudden you start to see more texture than you do in the two previous examples. So it definitely took the salt to really force the texture out of that color. Go figure. Next, we took salt and we sprinkled it into turquoise green, which happens to be one of Van Gogh's supposedly granulating colors, but it's super, 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 super mild, super mild. But once we got over here and sprinkled salt in, you can already start to see the different effect in texture that's being caused. Now, the second way of using salt is literally adding it to your water. Now, what you want to do though is make sure that you're not using too much water. You want a delicate balance, and I kind of honestly believe you want more of a salt ratio than a water ratio when you're adding it directly to your water. That's just been my experience, and I can only speak from my experience, right? Versus adding it directly to the paper. The difference is when you add it to the water versus directly to the paper, you're not going to get as intense texture and intense granulation. It's going to be super mild. I actually sprinkled salt in all of this so you can't see it. but it's going to be super mild. So those are the three ways we have looked at getting texture. And I'm going to slide that off and slide this here. If you pay attention to this bottom row where I sprinkled the salt, the texture is still forming. And it's going to continue to form until that swatch completely dries. So when I do the post of all of this over on Instagram in a few minutes after everything dries and show you some close-ups of what we've looked at, you're going to be able to see that there's even more texture and granulation in this bottom row. So there you have it, friends. There is a very long live on different ways to achieve granulation, from buying granulating watercolors to using granulating mediums to using something that pretty much everybody has in their pantry right now, which is salt. So if you guys have any other questions you want to ask, any other things you want to express, now's the time. Go ahead, throw them in the comments section. I'm going to be kind of skimming through the comments section really quick. If it wasn't for the fact that we've already been on 2.5 hours, I would go ahead and paint something. But what I'm going to do is roll this into a part two video, which we will tackle next Monday at 11 a.m., where we'll be using our self-made granulating palette and some of our additional techniques, mediums, and or salts in order to paint. How about we paint two illustrations? How about we paint one using just granulating watercolors, and then we'll paint another illustration where we enhance those granulating watercolors with either the medium or the salt. So next week in part two, we'll actually do the actual illustrations where we're putting all of this stuff into effect, into actual illustrations and creatings. Guys, don't forget to sprinkle a little love. Give the video a thumbs up if you've been here watching. If you're watching on replay, I would like and big and praise X that you do the same thing. Hey, if you got a platform and you got some followers, feel free to share the video. Maybe there's some other people who would love to take this lesson or get this little lecture on granulating watercolors and just see the different things that they may not have known. You guys are so welcome. Terry, you're welcome. Uh, Gwen said she loved the last row so much, right? And that was achieved with a regular table salt. And I'll throw this out there. The salt can be different based on what kind of salt you use. This is the technique we're getting from just a regular iodine, iodized table salt that you get out of the grocery store. You can go to the Dollar Tree right now and buy you a thing of salt for $1.25, and bam, you have a texture maker that'll last you for a very, very long time. But if you want more coarse texture, try sea salt. Ah, right. So the table salt, because it's ground so thin or so finely, I'm sorry, is going to give you more fine texture. But what if you don't want fine texture? What if you want coarse texture? What if you're painting a big mountain or big boulders? What if you want really coarse texture? What if you're creating like algae on top of a lake? What if you want to create really big, expressive snowflake impressions in your background? Try sea salt because it's going to give you bigger texture. The sea salt particles are bigger, right? So think about things like that. Kaylin said, Kaylin said, oh, I looked away for a moment and now I see the salt roll and cannot wait to get out my salt. Look at that. Right there in your cabinet, right? The salt roll probably has more granulation than anything else up there at the moment. Yes, you can create some really expressive texture with salt. See, Terry says, last year I was going to buy those Schminkel Hoard'em sets and started researching all the pigments to just mix my own. Yes, wonderful, wonderful idea, Terry. Thank you for reminding me to do that and try mixing my own. Yes, experiment, try mixing your own. Listen, friends, listen. Right now, if you were to buy a Schminkel, let's just look. Let's just look. because you guys know I'm all about the proof and the pudding. I don't like. I like to put example to words. I'm not one of those people that just expect you to just take my word for it. I like to prove what I'm going to say because I want you to be able to trust what's coming out of my mouth is accurate information, right? I want you to be able to rely that when you heard it from Thrifty, it's more than likely it's something that he did enough research behind for me to believe what he's saying. You know. So let's just jump over to Amazon right quick, and we are gonna look up. Let's see, Schminke, Schmike, HORDRAM, super granulating watercolors. Okay, so let's just see what we have here. Now, Schminke. See, Hortum Aquarelle, super granulating set, the Tundra set, which comes with only five 15 milliliter tubes, is $99 because it's in a wooden box. Hello, let me repeat that for you. Schminkel Hortum super granulating set, Tundra, in a wooden box for five tubes of 15 milliliter paint, which is a pretty big tube in all honesty, is $100 for five tubes. Although you do have to keep in mind how much paint 15 milliliters is. But still, now what you could do is go to Schminker's website, look up the pigments that those colors are made from, see if you have those colors and single pigments hanging around your studio anywhere, and try to mix it yourself. Or some variation that you can do something like add salt or granulation medium to, and bam, you just save yourself $100. Although that doesn't go far at the grocery store, it's still food, you know. Let's see what else we have here. We have the Schminkel Hortum Super Granulating. You can get a 5 milliliter 3 tube set, costs you 35 bucks. Now, depends on how you feel about it. That's 5 milliliter tubes. We're not talking about like the 15 milliliter tubes we were talking about here. We're talking about 5 milliliter tubes, which is going to be a dramatically less amount of paint, dramatically. And you're still paying $35 for three tubes. Let's talk about it. Go to the website, look up the pigment numbers that it's made of, see if you have those colors hanging around your studio somewhere. Try mixing them yourself. If you don't have the exact, try to mix a color close to it. Add you some salt or some granulation medium to it. Who else? Supervision. Let's see. Supervision. Let's see what Supervision runs, which is probably one of the most famous granulating watercolor makers. All right. Let's see here. So Supervision, and everybody know that Supervision has those three sets, and Supervision is actually much more affordable than Hortum is. Let's just be clear. Here you can get three tubes of Supervision, and they call these their layering colors. So they granulate and they split apart, sort of like this one we mixed ourselves. But notice what I just said. This one we mix ourselves. They're selling colors like that for $23.99 for three tubes of five. Is it 5 milliliters? Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are 15 milliliter tubes. Okay, I take that back. That's worth it. That is worth it. Of course, you do. I mean, then you get into other artist information issues like whether or not stuff like light fastness is important to you, because you do have to be careful of that. Now, notice I didn't touch anything about light fastness in this particular live because what we were concentrating on was the texture that could be created by knowing the different pigment numbers. Whether or not those pigments are light fast, completely different thing. Okay. Um, but yes, Supervision sells theirs in several different sets. You can get set A up through set E. All of them are 3 to 15 milliliters, which is actually an extremely large amount of paint, for 24 bucks. So these are world cheaper than Hortum. Excuse me. Ooh, I'm so sorry. However, Hortum would probably be the companies whose light fastens I would trust more. Although you're not going to see a lot of artists grabbing super granulated paints in order to do a commission piece unless it's actually requested by the person who commissions the piece. All right. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys that, let you see that with your own eyes, how you can do this yourself. Um, Gwen, I have a salt grinder with different sizes. Ooh, there you go. A salt grinder with different sizes that's going to help you create different textures. You know, it's a great idea. I need to order me one of those off of Amazon. That's a great idea. Although I have, you know, both table salt and sea salt already in the studio for granulation purposes. Um, My grandson is going to be so excited. Like me, he loves to learn new things. Oh, that's so cool. I hope he really likes it. Look, you guys see this? You still watching this bottom row? You see how as we talk, it's still continuing to change while everything else has settled down and stopped changing. Look, that bottom row still changing. And it's going to continue to change until that paper is 100% dry. Hello, Brittany. How are you? I'm glad you were able to roll in. So, friends, that seems to be all of questions. I don't think I have any more. So I'm going to do some edits to this, not many. I'm not going to cut out much at all in case anybody wants to refer back to this video because we talked about a lot of good things. And even the questions and the comments that I was reading from chat was super important in relation to what we were doing. So more than likely, the only thing I'm going to cut out completely once I edit this live will be the very beginning, right before we introduced and got into the live. But outside of that, everything else I'm probably going to leave in. And I'm probably more than likely going to rename this live to include part one so that you will be able to correlate the fact that this video goes with the live we're going to do next week, which will be part two. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. As I said earlier, don't forget to sprinkle a little love, and a little love is a thumbs up. Feel free to share. Jump in the video in a comment if you're watching on replay. Let me know what you thought. Drop any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if I don't know the answer, I will go find the answer for you because that's just what Thrifty does. Um, Check the other social sites. If you have Instagram, follow on Instagram, friends. If you have Facebook, follow on Facebook. If you have Facebook, consider joining Paints, Pencils, Pastels, and Markers. Yes, paints, pencils, pastels, and markers. It is literally a open to all artists, open to all medium Facebook group that I run, and we have a lot of different goodies and things going on. I had started a reference photo of the week challenge, but not many people were getting behind participating in. And I'll try out an idea. If it don't catch on, if people are not showing interest, then I'm not going to continue to do it because I can just put that energy into something that people are interested in. But I was doing a reference photo of the week over in the group where supposedly everybody would paint the same reference photo using whatever medium they wanted to use. But I found that I was the only person doing the painting. So I just, yeah, I have stopped doing that one. Um, Palm Street will be having our custom sketchbook sale going live February 22nd at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you are over on the Creation Station or a part of the Thrifty Apprentice Patreon community, whether it's paid or free, you do have access to this month's calendar. So you will have a reminder of all the good stuff that's going down. So definitely go check that out. In the meantime, friends, I want y'all to go out, enjoy your day. Creation Station, I will see you tonight at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time because we are going to be having us a good old lecture and lesson on using translucency in watercolor. Yeah, you heard me. You heard what I said. We are going to be painting translucent. We're painting a translucent flower. We're going to kind of practice, and then we're going to put that practice into effect, where I show you the technique of making a flower petal look see-through. So, if you're a part of the creation station, that's going down tonight. I hope to see you there at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're not a part of the creation station, or if you are a free member of the Patreon community, I encourage you to click on the membership options. There's only one creation station. Check out all the goodies that comes with it. It is super affordable and you get so many perks. All right, friends. That's a wrap for me this week, or should I say this live. Stay tuned. Wednesday, we will have that pre recorded release dropping where we are going to be doing that intermediate beach scene. So come bring your brushes, bring your supplies. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on the tubes, so that you can paint along. I haven't decided whether I'm going to time lapse it or whether I'm going to leave it real time and just kind of voice it over because of things that was going on while I was taping it. It was a lot. So yeah, enjoy your day. And remember, as I tell you at the end of every single video, other than thank you for joining me, it's just keep creating, my friends.